You are listening to the World Sports Show on WPPM LP Philadelphia. Soccer-based sports talk covering local, nation, and global soccer. Broadcasting from the Philly Cam studio in Center City, Philadelphia on 106.5 FM.
Charlie Flowe, World Sports Show. I'm joined with Coach Kat joining me on the line. Coach Kat, thank you for joining me. How are things with you?
So far, so good. Seems like, it's Thanksgiving week and we won't be able to spend time with our families, at least in a close range, but, looking forward to having a break.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of year that I think that sitting back as a coach or a professional, whatever you do, I think that we still have to reflect and take times for ourselves because we're working so hard to make things better and work the safest thing that it mentally is exhausting.
It is. And, although the pandemic has hit us, pretty heavily, the training camps, everything has, been postponed. I feel like I've worked harder and more during the pandemic in my house than I have whenever, everything was on a regular schedule.
Yeah, that's true. We're finding different pieces of free time we didn't know we had and different things as coaches that we're putting more focus on areas that we didn't. And a big thing is talking to our players. And I think you can attest to it because you've had a lengthy career with playing with Iran and coaching all over the world. Just talk about that part about, what you've gone through as a coach and player, about how important it is to be mentally strong just as a player.
Well, when I was a player, one of the largest factors that actually changed my perspective on women's soccer was during the Olympic qualification, where the Iran national team was disqualified from playing those games. And from there on, I realized that my mission is going to be a lot bigger than just than being a player on the national team. And my whole scope was, how am I going to get women's soccer to a level where people don't just dismiss us because of being a woman wearing a hijab. And that was my path or my entry ticket into the whole coaching world. I never expected to fully become a coach, let alone be the head coach of a national team. I thought I was going to retire and continue my career in oil and gas as an engineer and call it a day. But I couldn't leave my team behind. I couldn't leave the women behind. My calling was to create such a strong platform where FIFA or any other organization don't easily dismiss us ever again. And that's how my whole passion for coaching started. And I never looked back to why did I do this or why didn't I do that. It was more of how am I going to have an impact on these girls? How am I going to find players and train them and teach them everything I know and create this atmosphere where they are safe, they are capable, and they can also become leaders in this beautiful game.
We talk a lot about in the women's game just the equality and the even playing field, and you've seen it personally as a player that kind of grew up in America. We're in an American system, and then coaching and playing in Iran, and you've seen that. What does that save you when you were starting to slowly see, that equal playing field finally come out, the things that you had experienced, just trying to find a pair of boots for your players?
Yeah, in the U.S., we're given such. I'm not gonna say it's so easy in the U.S., but it's definitely you don't have to fight for your right to play on grass. You don't have to fight for your right to play with boys or just train in a park. You have everything is accessible, everything is in reach. But when I moved to Iran, it was such a secret society of women who wanted to get involved in soccer. And, there was nothing available for them. There was no team, there was no federation, there was no support. I mean, even if you talked about it, people would laugh in your face. So when I moved to Iran and, I quickly realized, I'm in a whole different world. One thing that I did uncover was the passion for soccer. But, even if you have passion, there was no platform, there was no team, there was nothing set up for them. And when I decided to stay in Iran to help the women there, it was more because I felt like I could change the history of a country, and I could change the perspective of the population's, viewpoint on women getting involved in soccer. But yes, it's a completely different world, not even comparable.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a chance to, speak with a lot of coaches like you, and did some work with Afghanistan, and I think it's just that getting over a lot of stigmas, and it just even comes down to the simplest thing of educating the people, of the simplicity of just a simple game with a ball, of how much positivity it can bring to these young women's lives. But then on the other hand, we have to be careful and be sensitive to different cultural views and different upbringings and religious views. And I'm sure that that's all in your mind of how you do it the right way and be productive in the same time.
Yes, and Iran is a very different situation because the population is 80 million, and those 80 million are obsessed with soccer. It is their second religion after Islam. But you have the elders, you have the people who are 5, 6 years old, and everyone is always debating about their favorite soccer team, and the stadiums are always packed. But with the whole cultural side of soccer in Iran is pretty grand. It was more of how do we get that culture also opening up to women wanting to get involved in the game. And I think it took only a couple of years before the decision makers and the public were embracing female soccer players and coaches. Initially, it was a little odd for them because they weren't sure if we were going to be successful. But when I was a national team player and we played our first game and won 10-0, we gained the confidence of the public. And all of a sudden, it was like this world turn of events that people wanted to support us. People were offering their hand to help us reach the next level.
Yeah, you talked about that first game winning 10-0. What's that feeling as a person, of Iranian heritage, just to put that jersey on and hear that national anthem? Is something I never made it that far, but it's something I just everybody dreams of, to represent their country.
I'm a dual citizen, so I playing as the first American Iranian, but representing a country that is also dear to me. My first game, it was so emotional. I was a 17-year-old girl living in Iran with a whole new, um, you know, jersey outfit, hijab, and I didn't know what I was fighting for or what I was trying to open the door of until my first game, because you start, you get goosebumps, you start shaking, you can't control the tears coming down your face because it's so much bigger than you and me. And this game by itself, it can change lives, it can change people's perspectives, it can bring a flow of support. It's a way of life, and I know that's a cliche way of saying it, but I didn't know the impact of soccer until my first national team game with Iran, about how I was able to change the face of a country.
Now, how was that process of getting the team together? It didn't just obviously happen overnight, that walk me through that, just from getting to going to Iran, getting that team together and stepping on that field, because you didn't have the luxury of having these, high class facilities that most national teams have. And in just the women's game, we'd see, especially in the Middle East, struggles.
Iran, when I first moved to Iran, the men's national team was preparing for the '06 World Cup. And we were all in the same training facility, except we didn't use the same field. We used like another field that was right next to it, which was equally good. But the federation was at the time doing their best to get women as comfortable as possible to start this new sport after the 1979 revolution, because before that women's soccer did exist, but all of a sudden 40 years later they started it again. As far as like facilities, it was top notch. But to find players, I remember I was a part of helping to recruit players, and they were just it was on the cold calling all the different provinces, and who knows who. If you have someone who even knows how to hit a ball, or if you have someone who's passionate about soccer, invite them to the camp, and that's how it started initially. But afterwards, after the very very first tournament where they saw our success, they built like member associations across the provinces, and all of a sudden you had 40,000 women wanting to register to play soccer. And after that, it became a little bit easier to promote soccer and get them involved, and to create a league as well as have the different age groups and national teams.
Yeah, you just hit it on the nail of the head when you start getting the general public, and you don't even realize now that a few years later that as a 17-year-old, how big that 10-0 game be and the early success you have, because who knows in a parallel universe if you guys would have gotten beat 10-0. We have seen that with some of these developing nations where it could send you back 20 years.
Exactly. And the very first tournament we had, it was a pivotal point for us as a team. And from there, the federation took us seriously. They brought in a coach that was on the national team of China to start training us. And they were helping us to become better for the future. But the one thing that was very difficult for me to understand was that how political soccer was in Iran. It's a make and break for the country. If the team loses, everybody will, go be on the streets and protest. But if the team wins, everyone is dancing on top of their cars. And I've never lived in a nation that soccer was so dear to the people or the general public. But after that, the promotion of women's soccer became huge, and it has taken time for the Iran national team to make it to the next level. And that's honestly, I can blame it on the mismanagement and, the allocation of budgets, the amount of, we only have one league, which is the senior league, we don't have grassroots level, which is something that I'm trying it's my new project of how to implement that strategy within the Iranian society, how to promote grassroots soccer.
Yeah, like let's talk about that. You're into coaching. I've seen some of your messages on social media, just trying to get some of the Iranian players over here and do some training and do some games, and share with us, some of your ideas and goals that you want to do.
Iran, soccer runs in their veins. So, if a country whenever I was the head coach of the under-19 national team, I had a year and 2 months before our games. And it was tough. It was, but a lot of good planning was in it. But within a year and 2 months, I was able to teach a player that has never touched a soccer ball how to become one of the best left backs in all of Asia. So on the Iran side, it's a very natural talent that, it needs to be unveiled. And I think if I was able to bring the national team or just a group of, young, talented soccer players to the US, it would, act as a catalyst to, bring out all their natural talents and, to focus heavily on the education side of soccer and for them to see and have a different perspective of world-class soccer. That's something that I am working on currently. I'm waiting for the tension between my two countries to calm down a little bit so I can actually get the support and help to begin this project.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about coaches, you and I, that you want to put players into a professional environment and surround them with other players that have grown up in a professional environment. And we've seen that with the, girls and women's soccer in the U.S. The U.S. women are a powerhouse. They win World Cups about every other World Cup. They won the last 2 World Cups. So just having your players being in that environment, it almost becomes contagious because you grew up in the kind of the U.S. system of the club where, it's very serious. And then I think it like I said, it becomes contagious where these players it becomes like routine. When I coach my WPSL team, they're already in the habits of knowing what stretching are, what warm-ups are, what a technical and tactical training session looks like. And just that goes on that you're going to find the talent, but I think it's just getting them into those types of habits.
Exactly. And that takes time. It's a whole process that takes several years to embed in their head. And when after I after I left Iran and came to the US, I immediately went straight to the DA in Seattle, which is now OL Reign. But talking to these girls, I didn't need to teach them much. I just need to put them in the correct position so they can play, because they're all very good top professional players. Some are on the national team, and their mission is to have a very good game. Their mission is to make sure that their position is is comfortable for them, and they're breaking their own barriers and they're breaking out of their own comfort zone. Whereas in Iran, I had always a whiteboard, and I had to teach them what is a tactical section, what is a technical session, what is the whole dynamic warm up, and why we don't just do static anymore. And I was doing that with under 19-year-olds, whereas here, by the time the girl is like 10 or 11, she knows everything herself. as far as like the warm-ups go. And when a coach tells her, you know, you need to be in a diagonal position to receive that, you know, penetrating pass, she gets it. Whereas in Iran, it was, you know, it took a lot longer for me to be able to come up with an education program for my players, because they never experienced it. They never had a coach that would teach them the basics and fundamentals of soccer.
Yeah, you talked about some of the things that you came over to the U.S. and, you know, that we want to look at all the different ways that we have not really come up with a perfect system for men or women. You know, there's the pay-to-play system. As much as I hate saying it, it's the true ugly face that shows up in America a lot. I deal with it. I've coached with very large clubs. I coach with a small club now, and then even the helicopter parents, where it does make our heads spin as a coach. A lot of things are put on us. And what was that like? Just kind of, you know, seeing how the helicopter parents work, that, you know, that parents are on top of you, and it's tough because I get parents on top of me all the time.
It's you know, it wasn't anything that I expected, because I traveled across Asia. I've done several coaching courses, for example, in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Bhutan, you know, to say the least. And, you know, the players that come to me, you know, their parents, they're not on the side of the field unless like they can come, because majority of them have to work to survive. I'm talking about the parents. You know, the players would come with, you know, holes in their shoes, or if they even had shoes, barely they had, you know, clothes on, because, you know, it's not, they would, you know, for example, have a shirt and like write with something with mud, you know, the number 10, but they would hustle for you, they would play for you, they would do their best to understand you, because there's always a language barrier. So their love of the game was very different compared to, you know, what I was experiencing in the US and still experience, because the players are playing to get recruited by colleges. They're playing to, you know, hopefully make the national team. And, you know, the parents are saying that we're paying and we're your client. You have to listen to us. It is customer first. And this wasn't anything that I've ever experienced before. And it was difficult initially, the first couple months, until I was able to, you know, manage my own emotions, because, you know, I'm coming from a national team position where I was the leader of a team. And, you know, the respect that you have and the type of support that I had was unbelievable. And then all of a sudden come to a place where, you know, the lady wants to take her daughter out of the club because I only gave her 20 minutes to play. And, you know, my experience is that whoever works best, they deserve to play. Whoever can show me that they want to be here, they deserve to play. Not because, you know, you're paying and, you know, that's how they think that they deserve, you know, some minutes. But I had to, you know, swallow a lot of my pride. I had to learn a lot about the system to make them happy, to make the girls want to continue to play. Because, you know, in my opinion, if a player just comes and stands around and, you know, doesn't want to hustle, I'm still kind of forced to play them. So what does that say about my coaching style? Is it because, you know, I'm being forced to have them play, or is it because, you know, they're going to be put in a pivotal position for the team, and also it'll be an education curve for them as well? So it was really difficult initially, but fortunately I was able to gain the trust of the parents. And, you know, slowly they, you know, they were only, you know, the only communication that I had with them was, you know, that the team was doing really good and that they're very happy that their daughter is playing with, you know, with me and the team. But it was hard. It was very hard, this whole pay to play process, for me to comprehend.
Yeah, I mean, it's neat when you're telling the stories. A lot of stories are popping in my head from my, I guess, 18 years of coaching. That the one thing that I try to, and I love coaching players that are soccer junkies, girls and boys, the same thing. They're just junkies. They love the game. They watch the game. They can't get enough of it. And it's a little different on the girls and female side, that we don't have a lot of those girls that are just soccer junkies. Where on my boys team, these kids they're waking up at 7 a.m. watching EPL matches, and they just cannot get enough. Coach, what games are on? What games watch? Oh, coach, can we end practice like 15 minutes early? I'm like, why? Oh, well, so-and-so plays in MLS playoffs tonight. Can we leave? Oh, sure, man. I'll cut practice a little. And when I do have a couple of those female players that are really into it, they're really into it. But I think a lot of it comes from almost cultural upbringing, that, like, my daughter's only 2 and some couple months old, but it's just exposing her to love the game and have that passion that hey, our national team's playing. And I kid you not, here's a story. I coached with a club a couple years ago, and I asked to cancel a girls' practice because our national team was playing a few miles away. I'm talking about USA national team is playing a few miles away. and the hoops I had to jump through to get practice canceled, and saying, let these girls go to the game. They were playing Japan. Yeah, it was a She Believes Cup, USA Japan. I'm like, I shouldn't have to jump through hoops to cancel a girls' practice because the national team's playing 20 minutes away. It should be an automatic, okay, national team's playing, we're done. And it should go across on both genders, okay? Because I did get some feedback. Oh, well, it's just the women's team playing. If the men's team are playing, I'm like, oh, okay, I see how it is. You know, let's be honest. If a national team is a national team, I don't care what gender it is, that's your country playing. All soccer should be canceled that night. The kids should go home and watch it.
Yeah, and this is, a very important factor and point that you brought up is that, the girls, it's very seldom that I find them to actually know the different leagues across Europe, let alone the MLS team, and for them to watch games as an educational tool, not just whatever the coach says. Because what I've noticed in Seattle was that they seldomly would say what they were watching as far as who they were watching, who their favorite player was, and the different types of systems that they are coming along with. Instead, they were telling me what their previous coach was telling them, and that's what they stick with. They only go with, oh, well, my coach last year told me that this is the only way. But there's a million different, it's a puzzle piece. I mean, soccer is a puzzle. Like, it depends on who you're playing against. How do you want to achieve your goal, which is ultimately winning? Every game has a different strategy. Every game has a different, you could be playing left back one game, and then maybe, I'll push you up one line, or maybe I'll have three in the back. So my goal was to train my players that, it doesn't always have to be played with the same system. Whatever, depending on who we play against, we have a strategy, and our strategy is to win and to play very beautiful soccer.
No, it's a great point you bring up. I do love this conversation. Well, what system are you playing, coach? I'm like, well, it depends on who we're playing and the time of the game. Like, for example, my college team, one of my college teams, we'd always start with a 4-3-3. And if we got a lead, we're dropping to a 4-4-2 because we knew if we had a good lead, and I hate to say it, we'd play sit-back soccer. But at the end of the day, at the college level, we're playing for one goal, and that is to win. So I think it's a hard thing is differentiating when is it development and when is it winning, and that's a hard thing, to have conversation with parents. And the same thing with when you're coaching with the DA program. Are we here to win, or are we here to develop? Do you want me playing this system and getting our butts kicked every week because you want to play the system? But it does kind of take away from you and I as educated coaches that, all right, if I'm going to play this system, am I really the coach? Because you're determining my system without evaluating my talent.
Exactly. And that was something that was hard for me, because I'm creative. I like to be, I don't want people to think that they know what's going through my head, or to predict anything as a coach. I'm always full of surprises. And when I am able to have that platform of creativity, no one's been able to stop me or my team. And that was something tough for me to be able to ignite with my players, was that, they're like, we've never played like this. We don't keep possession and, pass really quickly up the flank, and then, pressure in the attacking third to keep the ball there. And I'm like, okay, well, wouldn't you prefer to always maintain possession and be in the attacking third for more opportunities? But, to each coach their own. But, I like to be creative. I like to play around with I like to play around with the different styles and systems, because as a coach, you're supposed to play a beautiful game. You're supposed to be the master of your what's it called, your objective. So if I'm not able to show beautiful soccer, what is my purpose on the side of the field? To sit there and to take notes, or to sit there and communicate with my players, and to bring them up when they're down, and to make sure that they're maintaining a strong mental level, and able to implement the strategy that we trained on. So all of these are huge factors, and all of this comes down to the players. Like, are they there to play beautiful soccer, or are they just there to get recruited by colleges and then say goodbye after 4 years? What is it that they really want? Are they going to sit on weekends to watch games and to see who did what and how? These are all really important for me as a coach, to see that players have the passion not just to sit and watch the game, but also to play the game in a new way, in a new dimension. Because I think right now the way soccer is evolving is that each game has, honestly, for example, my favorite team is Chelsea, and they change up all the time. And they're never predictable. And that's how I intend to be and how I intend to train my team.
Well, you're obviously welcome on World Sports Show anytime now that my favorite team, my favorite EPL team is Chelsea. So moving forward, you are invited. I won't have to block you from the show. But no,
Thank
but
you.
it's true. I think that even just being fans of certain teams and certain coaches and certain players that, your teams have struggles. You have your loyalties tied to the team that you cheer for, but you have to realize that the professional coach, whatever coach and whatever team is, they're doing their best to make it work, and they're doing their best to have a system. And it's so easy for people to sit back and be critical, be critical, be critical. But I think that one thing this pandemic has really opened up for me is watching and reading a lot, and watching documentaries and reading a lot from different football coaches and at different perspectives. Are we a high pressing team? Are we a sit back team? And, I think that kids should be educated on every single formation, because every time of the game, there's hardly any games that are exactly the same. And a moment's notice, we might have to press now for the last 20 minutes. And I think that's the cool part about being a fan of a certain system of coaches, because there's plenty of coaches that, teams that wear red that are against Chelsea, but I'm like, hey, I love what you're doing, but I wish you were my coach.
Yeah. And, one thing that I've learned over my very short years of coaching is that I am here to not just educate, but to also be educated by the players. Each player has always taught me something very valuable of how I can become better every single day. But a lot of coaches are closed off from, if this is my system and that is it, there's no way of changing. So I try to go with the ebbs and flows of the different personalities of the team. And especially when I came to Seattle, they were so professional that, I had to be friends with them. I couldn't be there like a dictator and tell them what to do and how to do it. Because A, I'm a woman, and B, there wasn't much of an age difference, and there had to be mutual respect. So I had to gain their respect for them to want to hustle for me and to hustle for the team. And I am not, as a national team coach, integrating into, a very elite league like at the time, the DA, it's different because previously, I was petrified of 80 million plus population attacking me if we lost. But, now I was more scared of the parents and if the player was upset. But it's all about mutual respect and making sure that there's very good vibes between the coach and the players and the parents.
No, it's so true. Like, one of the things that really stuck out to me is what you said about the character, something that we don't spend a lot of times. Everybody's talking about the X's and O's and formations. You got to get the most talented, because there's been times where, like, I'm doing tryouts. Maybe 50 women are trying out for 20 roster spots. And something about players with personalities that show up and push, that there's players that are just the hustle players. That's an example of me. I was a bench warmer most of my career, but, it's like that player that's making jokes, pushing other players. Like, I look at, like, when I was a goalkeeper coach, like, all right, what are my 2 and 3 like? I know what my number 1 is, but are my 2 and 3 have great personalities and they want one to succeed? And these are the things that parents are in all these years are only looking at. All right, what's your best 11? I'm like, you don't realize 12 through 18 are pushing the 11.
Right. Yeah. And, the personalities that I tend to, like, for example, when I was the head coach of the national team, not many of them they've never played a soccer match in their life, but their attitude and the way they were, they had the backbone to work really hard is what caught my attention. And it was less talk, more work. Like that's like pretty much is the definition of my team, because they knew how much they had to struggle in order to, play against teams like Korea or Vietnam or Russia, for example. They knew what they had to give up emotionally to be able to play against such strong international teams. And in the US, it was different because it was like a team that was handed to me. Now try to find a balance, strike a balance between all the different personalities to make the most out of it. And that was where it was very challenging for me, because you have some players who don't want to say a word, they don't want to work, but they want to play. And then you have players who have always been captains, they're on the national team, they're always bubbly, and they're willing to do anything to help with the success of the team. So to strike a balance between a very polar opposite players was challenging, but I think I found the solution of it. And it's honestly just a lot of communicating, a lot of talking, a lot of strategizing, setting up meetings outside of the field to try to bring harmony across the entire team.
Coach Kat, I want to thank you so much for coming to the World Sports Show. We're going to wrap this interview. I definitely want to have you on again. Anything we can do to help support your causes, let me
Thank
know.
you.
And thank you so much. You have a good one.
You as well. Bye-bye.